When Harold turned 78, he sat alone on the porch of the modest brick house he had owned for over 40 years. The sun was sinking into the horizon, casting long amber rays over the cracked pavement. He held a lukewarm cup of tea and watched the sparrows pecking in the yard. His knees ached, his back ached. But more than anything else, something deeper inside ached, a loneliness that no pill could ease. His children were grown and scattered across the country. Sarah, the eldest, lived in Chicago, busy raising 2 kids and managing her legal practice. Jacob, the middle one, had taken a tech job in San Diego and hadn't visited in nearly 5 years. And Mia, his youngest, sent occasional birthday texts, always ending with, "Love you, Dad," but never followed by a call. It wasn't always this way. They were close once, dinners around the kitchen table, camping trips, birthday parties with too many balloons. But life, Harold realized, has a way of stretching connections thin until they're translucent and frail, like old spider webs in the attic. He'd spent much of his life believing that when he got old, his children would be there, that they would visit, help him around the house, keep him company, maybe even live nearby. But they had their own lives, and he was just a part of their past, not their present. It was a painful realization, but not an unusual one. Over the past few years, Harold had met others in similar situations, at the community center, in the park, at church. People who had sacrificed, who had given everything to their families, only to find themselves quietly forgotten in their later years. One day, he met Martin, a retired school principal who was always impeccably dressed and never short on a story. They sat next to each other during a seniors art class and began chatting. Over time, Harold learned something important from Martin, something that changed the way he saw old age. "Don't count on your kids," Martin said bluntly one afternoon. "It's not that they don't care. It's just that life gets in the way. You've got to prepare for that." That lesson stuck with Harold, and over time, he realized that old age wasn't about waiting on phone calls or visits that might never come. It was about finding meaning on your own terms. And for that, 3 things truly mattered: health, friendships, and purpose. Health was the foundation. Harold had always been moderately active, but now he made a point to walk every morning, no matter the weather. He cooked for himself, mostly simple meals: grilled fish, steamed vegetables, fresh fruit. It wasn't about living forever. It was about living well enough to move, to think clearly, to enjoy what was left. The fewer things he needed help with, the freer he felt. Friendship came next. After years of keeping to himself, Harold began reaching out. He joined a weekly book club and started attending local events. He struck up conversations at the grocery store and volunteered twice a month at the food pantry. Slowly, faces turned into names, and names into friends. His social circle wasn't large, but it was warm. And when birthdays came around, it was these friends who showed up with cake and stories, not his children. Then there was purpose. After retiring from the post office, Harold had drifted for a while, but now he found himself drawn to writing. Nothing fancy, just little stories about life, about love, about loss. He shared them at the local library storytelling nights, and people clapped and laughed and even cried. It gave him something to look forward to, a reason to wake up and feel alive. There were still hard days. Holidays could be particularly lonely, especially when the phone stayed silent. But Harold learned not to let bitterness settle in. Resentment, he discovered, was heavier than solitude. Instead, he focused on the small joys: a good cup of coffee, a letter from an old friend, a child's laughter on the sidewalk. One snowy morning, as he cleared his porch, a young man from across the street came over to help. His name was Aaron, and he had just moved in with his wife and newborn. Over time, Harold became something of a surrogate grandfather. He taught Aaron how to prune the rose bushes, shared old family recipes, and even babysat occasionally. They would talk for hours, not about the past, but about life as it unfolded day by day. In his 80s now, Harold no longer waited for his children to call. He loved them still, but he understood that love didn't always come with presents. He learned that relying on others for your happiness was a fragile plan. Instead, he invested in himself, in his well-being, his connections, and his sense of meaning. So when people asked if he was lonely, he would smile and shake his head. "I'm not alone," he'd say. "I've just stopped expecting the wrong things." In the end, aging with grace wasn't about being surrounded by your family. It was about being surrounded by your life, the one you continue to build, even when the world seemed to move on without you. Harold found peace not by looking backward, but by staying grounded in the present. And in doing so, he became someone others looked up to, not for what he had lost, but for what he had found.